There was a time when DC Comics Elseworld stories was basically unimpeachable. Everything they did there was pretty much dynamite. It had a purpose. A lot of times it was to present classic DC characters in situations that you just couldn't really put into the mainline series, into continuity, because it just didn't fit the DC universe. But there was something really interesting to explore there. You think about like Superman Red Sun. What if Superman actually landed in the Soviet Union and became the ultimate champion of communism? Doesn't really fit Superman within continuity, but that is an interesting story to tell, a very interesting what if. You think about Kingdom Come, a far off destination in the future, undetermined, that doesn't really play out in this timeline where things go haywire and the original heroes have to come back, set things in order, and show people what it's like to be a real hero again. Really the reascension of Superman and the other heroes within the DC universe. You think about like the Killing Joke, taking the Joker and going so far, taking off all restrictions that would happen in continuity and seeing what could Joker be on his very worst day. What is that character actually capable of? And a lot of times these types of stories would end up informing who the characters would become in the DC Comics universe, like in the future and stuff. Obviously the Killing Joke is pretty much a part of DC canon at this point. But DC Comics Elseworld stories in 2022 are absolutely sad. These are creators that don't actually like the characters that they're working with, so they're just breaking them so they can tell their really lame-ass story that no one is going to be talking about in like 10 to 15 years. You think about stories like Kingdom Come, Red Sun, The Killing Joke. Those things are still in demand because those are seminal events and stories that are so magnificent, it doesn't matter when they were created, they will always be read. They're that good. We are getting nothing like that. A prime example is Gary Whitta's Batman Fortress, a series that I don't have the slightest fucking clue why it's even being made at this point. He's saying nothing about Batman. He's saying nothing about Superman. He's not even really saying anything about the DC Comics universe. He had a story he wanted to tell. It didn't fit in the DC universe whatsoever, and he's just breaking the characters around his story because Gary Whitta, shockingly, is a very shitty writer. If you need an example, go and check out the very first issue, the worst page in Batman comic book history. Recently, we got to see Jackson Hyde just start murdering people, but he was justified because they called him mean names. And finally, Gary Whitta tackles Superman and does his damnedest to make Superman the bad guy, to change his history, not for the purpose of doing anything entertaining or having something interesting to say about the character of Superman, or maybe putting him in a different light. What if this had happened? What if this had happened? Just to do something that people will talk about and likely not like. And that is exactly what happens in Batman Fortress number 7, the penultimate issue of this raging dumpster fire from DC Comics. I can't even recognize the brand anymore. Right now, they have a few things that are absolutely working that are magnificent. Batman Superman, World's Finest, absolutely read that. The Flash, you need to be reading that. Batman, definitely read that. But everything else is so mid, it's not even funny. And the stuff that's not mid is absolute dog shit like this. You are not going to believe, well, I guess you will believe it because you probably know what Gary Whitta has done just to like Batman and Jackson Hyde in this run. But I'm still surprised DC Comics let this motherfucker do this to Superman. You're not going to be shocked, I guess, but I have a feeling you're going to hate this just as much as I do. So we do know that the Fortress of Solitude is no longer in the Antarctic. It's no longer in the Bermuda Triangle. It's actually at the bottom of the ocean, and that's where Batman and President Luthor and Jackson Hyde have all shown up. I think there's a couple other people with them as well, because they need to find out where Superman is. We've got aliens invading the planet. We have seen nothing about that. So they've gone to the Fortress of Solitude, and they've discovered a message from Jor-El. In fact, it's the last message he ever recorded for his son. Since the House of El came to power a generation ago, it has corrupted a once great society, made it fearful and mistrusting of its neighbors. And now, in its lust for power, its avaricious desire to build a great Kryptonian empire, through bloody and brutal conquest, it has succeeded only in sowing the seeds of our own civilization's downfall. Soon, all that will remain of Krypton is its name, to only be remembered in ignominy. For my part, I did what I could to curb the more aggressive instincts of my father and elder brothers, those chiefly responsible for the invasion of countless worlds, aided by the weapons and technology I designed. I failed. Many Kryptonians have already fled, scattering to the far reaches of space. I will not do that. I choose to remain and face the consequences of what my family has wrought. But my death alone is not nearly enough to atone for all our sins. It is, I hope, only the beginning. So for some reason now, according to Batman Fortress number 7, Krypton wasn't destroyed because they wasted their natural resources and there was a big catastrophe. It turns out the House of El were actually a bunch of war criminals. They were going out there and murdering people and destroying planets. How that led to the destruction of Krypton, how going out there and defeating other enemies and being savages and killing people ends up blowing your own planet up. I don't think Gary Whitta actually thought that one through, but that's the message we're now receiving from Jor-El regarding the end of Krypton. What do you think about this change? Was it worth it to do a change like this because of Batman, the Fortress, and Gary Whitta? Did Gary Whitta ever earn the opportunity to do such a change? I would say absolutely no. You don't just go give random jabrones opportunities to jump in on your most important characters like Batman and Superman and make wholesale changes like this. Now Batman supports rioters. He's not there to stop people from committing crimes. He's in support of people going out there and destroying and burning down buildings. And Superman lied to the entire world, and everything that he said about where he came from and what happened to his home planet is a lie. That's what Gary Whitta has done to the character. Why are they letting him do this? It does continue, and as you might imagine, Lex Luthor does take advantage. So Superman's family were war criminals. Oh man, this is almost too good to be true. This is what Batman has to say. If you even think about trying to use this against him, when we get back to this world, I will make you regret it. That goes for all of you. Jackson Hyde says, hey, what's happening in the Fortress of Solitude stays in the Fortress of Solitude. Am I right? Lex Luthor, I'm sorry, but no. As President of the United States, I have an obligation to protect Americans against anything that could pose a threat to them. We've got a weapon of mass destruction flying all over this planet, acting like he's our savior, and it turns out he's the heir to an empire of fascist warmongers. You don't think the people of Earth have a right to know the truth about who he really is? I would say President Luthor has a little bit of a point there. Once you find out that Superman has essentially lied to the entire world about where he came from, what else is he lying about at this point? And I guess this is supposed to be really good confrontation. The problem is no one buys it. Everyone knows this is bullshit, and it's just stupid, contrived nonsense being regurgitated all over the pages by Gary Whitta. He thinks he's being clever. This is really just the lamest thing you've ever seen in the world. Yes, Batman's just going to start beating people up to protect Superman's secret, even though he lied to him too. Not interested in that. Why would Superman lie to me and all this stuff? He's just there to hush people up. I was like, you got to get out of here with that. There's another part of this comic book. I'll cover the last page that is just, it's just dog shit. Let's call it what it is. The people of Earth know who he really is. He's shown us. How many times has he saved us? More than once, he's saved us from you. Lex Luthor, you're going to go to bat for a guy you've had plenty of your own run-ins with. You two have never really seen eye to eye, have you? Maybe you should have trusted that instinct. Maybe you don't want to admit that you backed the wrong horse. Red Arrow, you're not fooling anyone, Mr. President. You don't give a crap about the people of Earth. You want to turn them against Superman. Get him out of your way. You catch on quick, kid. Seriously, you should come work for me. Jackson Hyde with truly profound words. It's not right to judge someone for what their father did. Believe me, I know that more than most. President Luthor, this isn't just about what his father did. It's about what he did. He lied to us. He lied to everyone. Cooked up a story about a peaceful world destroyed by a natural disaster. His whole life here is based on a lie. There's no doubt if you go back to the history of DC Comics, when they've interacted with each other, Superman and Batman have not always seen eye to eye. In fact, they used to be kind of rivals. They would fight from time to time. But that's been quite some time at this point. They definitely see eye to eye on most things, and they're pretty much best friends and have been for decades at this point. It's too bad Gary Whitta couldn't take the time to actually read a Batman or a Superman comic, to actually be informed about the state of the DC Comics universe, to actually be informed on the characters. And maybe he wouldn't be making so many stupid mistakes trying to change things that he has no business even sniffing, let alone altering in the DC Comics universe at this point. But I don't blame Gary Whitta. I blame DC Comics editorial. I blame Jim Lee. I blame the dipshits that actually hired this jabroni and actually let him come in here and write this pointless story that nobody in the comic book reading community is actually reading at this point. The only person reading it is me, just so I can tell you guys how fucking shitty it is. And this is just another example of why Gary Whitta should never be invited back to DC Comics ever again in the history of the publisher. He got one opportunity to work with the two biggest heroes in the history of DC Comics, primarily Batman, but it is also focused around Superman. and he's dropped the ball every single opportunity that he's had to. This guy is a fucking jabroni. He's a hack. And the fact that Ben Abernathy, the executive editor at DC Comics, actually approved this and got it published speaks very, very ill on him. In fact, before this, we did get the worst page in Batman comic book history. I talked about it in the video. If you didn't see this, if you were unaware of this, you won't believe what this motherfucker had to say about Batman and writers. Absolutely disgusting stuff. As soon as they saw this, they should have canceled the book outright. If you can't see the video here, there's also a link in the video description.